Something's just not right with the Buffalo Bills. And if Sunday's performance against the Atlanta Falcons didn't prove that, I don't know what will. The Bills looked flat, uninspired, unprepared, and once again, the offense fell completely short in key moments. We've now hit a stretch where this unit looks like a shell of what we expected, and against a Falcons team that came into this game known for bringing the heat defensively, the Bills had no answers. Zero adjustments, no rhythm, and barely any urgency. It was frustrating, it was ugly, and it was avoidable. Let's talk about Josh Allen, because, yes, the stats say he threw for 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. But that doesn't begin to capture the real story here. This was one of the worst games we've seen from him in years, the 10th worst in terms of EPA since 2020. And he looked rattled, visibly rattled, like he didn't trust what he was seeing or what was around him. And the Falcons? They blitzed him on 60% of his dropbacks. That's an absurd number, and the Bills looked like they were seeing that kind of pressure for the first time in their lives. Protection breakdowns were everywhere. The offensive line got beat, sure, but Allen didn't help either, taking sacks, bailing from clean pockets, locking it on targets, ignoring open receivers. It was a meltdown from all sides. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend it was all on Allen. This was a failure from top to bottom, and it starts with offensive coordinator Joe Brady. This team knew what kind of defense Atlanta was bringing. The Falcons have led the league in blitz rate all season. You know the heat is coming. You know you're going to get exotic looks. You know they're going to test your protection rules and your quarterback's ability to process. And yet, the Bills look surprised. They look like they were hoping Atlanta wouldn't do what they've done all year. That's not game planning. That's wishful thinking. And that's not how you win in this league. It's easy to point to the missing weapons. Dalton Kincaid was out. Josh Palmer got hurt after looking like he might be on his way to a big night. But that's football. Every team deals with injuries. Every team loses guys mid-game. The good ones adjust. The good ones adapt. And Buffalo? They just kept calling the same stuff. They leaned into ISO throws to Keon Coleman, who was blanketed in coverage most of the night. They didn't get creative. They didn't counter the pressure. They didn't even use James Cook the way they should have, despite the fact that he was clearly effective every time he touched the ball. Speaking of Cook, 17 carries for 134 yards as a team, over 5.5 yards per carry, and yet they just didn't stay committed to the run. They had success running gap schemes out of under center. They were getting movement. They were getting chunk plays. They were showing exactly the kind of physicality you want against a smaller, aggressive defensive front. And still, they went away from it. Instead, they went right back to the passing game that wasn't working with a quarterback who was clearly out of sync against a defense that was feasting on obvious situations. That's bad situational awareness. That's poor coaching. And again, it all circles back to Joe Brady. Let's go back to the passing game for a second, because this wasn't just about missed throws or pressure. This was about process. Josh Allen wasn't seeing the field clearly. He had moments where he clearly predetermines where he wants to go with the ball and refuses to adjust even when the defense gives him something else. There were routes open. The film shows it. This idea that nobody was getting separation is simply not true. Are these receivers elite route runners? No. Do they win consistently? No. But there were throws to be made, and Allen either didn't see them, didn't trust them, or chose not to make them. That's what happens when a quarterback is out of rhythm, when the play design doesn't match what the defense is showing, and when protection is collapsing every other snap. And when I say the protection was a problem, I'm not just talking about the offensive line getting beat. I'm talking about a lack of preparation. There were too many times where the pressure got home completely unblocked. That's not just a missed block. That's a scheme issue. That's a lack of recognition. That's a quarterback and coordinator not being on the same page. And when that's happening, nothing else matters. You could have prime Jerry Rice out there, and it wouldn't make a difference. The most concerning part of all this is that it's not new. Last week against New England, same story. Opportunities missed. Poor game planning. Lack of awareness. You would think that loss would be a wake-up call. You would think there would be a sense of urgency to fix it. And instead, they doubled down on everything that didn't work. That's the most frustrating part. It's not just that they lost. It's that they looked lost. Now, Let's talk about how they're using Keon Coleman. Look, the guy has traits. He's got size, ball skills, the ability to make plays when things break down. But he's not someone who's going to consistently beat good corners in one-on-one situations. Yet over and over again, the Bills kept going to these ISO throws, expecting him to uncover or win jump balls. And it just wasn't there. These are wasted downs, and they're showing up in high-leverage moments. Why? What has he done in games to earn that kind of trust in isolation? You want to get him involved? Scheme him open. Get him in motion. Use him as a mismatch piece. But to just throw him out there and expect him to win on an island, especially when the quarterback is under siege and not playing with confidence, that's just poor strategy. And I'm not letting the rest of the receiving core off the hook either. There were moments where guys just didn't win. But again, some of that falls on how they're being used. When you have an offense that can't protect, can't win consistently outside, and has a quarterback trying to do too much, the answer isn't to double down on shot plays or late developing reads. The answer is to simplify. Get the ball out fast. Get into tempo. Lean on the run. Lean on play action. And none of that happened consistently. It felt like this offense was trying to prove a point, like they were going to run what they wanted to run no matter what the defense showed them. That's not how you win in this league. You win by adapting. Even when the Bills did have success, like on their first drive or early in the second half, it was because they leaned into their strength. Big personnel, under center, play action, gap runs, misdirection. That's when they looked most comfortable. That's when they actually strung plays together. But instead of building off of that, they went right back to shotgun, empty sets, slow developing routes, and asking Allen to play hero ball under fire. That's not sustainable. That's not smart football. And it's baffling that this team keeps falling into the same trap week after week. Let's not forget how little they got from key players. James Cook, barely used in the passing game again. Ty Johnson played almost as many snaps, and the only reason is because he's considered the better pass blocker. I get it. The Falcons were bringing pressure, but there are ways to use Cook even in those situations. Put him in the slot. Use him on screens. Get the ball in his hands quickly. You don't just have to bench your best playmaker because you're afraid he might miss a blitz pickup. That's coaching scared. That's playing not to lose. And what about Ray Davis? 2 snaps. One resulted in a first down. The other? A touchdown. What else does the guy have to do to earn more looks? That's what I mean when I say this offense feels like it's stuck in its own playbook. It's like they decided before the game who they were going to feature and win, and then refused to adjust based on how things were actually going. That's not just stubborn. That's reckless. We haven't even gotten to the execution issues. Drops, poorly thrown balls, missed assignments, route spacing that makes no sense. This isn't just about getting beat by a good defense. This is about beating yourself with the same mistakes over and over again. And until that gets cleaned up, from the coaches to the quarterback to the receivers and the line, this offense is going to continue spinning its wheels. What's wild is that this game wasn't a blowout. The defense, after a brutal start, actually settled in. They gave the offense multiple chances to come back, to take control. But nothing. No spark. No adjustment. Just more of the same predictable, ineffective football. And that's why this loss stings more than most. Because it was there for the taking. And they just let it slip away. If the passing game was a mess, the run game only adds to the confusion. Because here's the thing. When the Bills actually committed to running the football, they were successful. They averaged over 5.5 yards per carry. That's not just respectable, that's dominant. They ran for over 130 yards as a team. But instead of building their game plan around what was working, they used the run as a side dish. Something to mix in, not something to control the flow of the game. And that's where this team continues to misfire. They can't seem to recognize what's working in real time. It's as if they're married to a script, and once they're off that script, they just start throwing darts at a wall and hoping something sticks. The most baffling part is how obvious the mismatch was. Atlanta's defense is built on speed. They're undersized up front. They're designed to bring pressure and disrupt timing. But they can be moved in the run game. And we saw that in spurts. The Bills came out in heavy sets, fullback on the field, multiple tight ends. And when they ran gap schemes downhill, Atlanta couldn't hold up. James Cook was ripping off chunk runs. The line was getting movement. Play action was pulling linebackers out of position. It looked like the Bills had found their identity. But then, for reasons only Joe Brady can explain, they moved away from it. Instead of leaning on what was working, they started calling pass plays from spread formations. They invited the blitz. They gave up the physical advantage they had. And it's not like they were down by 3 scores. The game was still within reach. But there was no urgency to take control. No awareness of the flow of the game. Just stubborn play calling that ignored everything the tape was showing. It's hard to watch a team find something that clearly works, only to abandon it mid-game. That's not just poor coaching, that's a lack of feel. Even when they did go back to the run, it was almost accidental. The second half opened with a run-heavy drive, and guess what? They marched down the field and scored. Cook was decisive. The blocking was clean. You had misdirection, play action, the fullback creating space. Everything clicked. But again, it didn't stick with it. The next few drives? Back to spread sets, back to long developing routes, back to forcing throws to covered receivers. It's like this offense has an identity crisis. They don't know what they want to be. Or maybe they do, and they just don't care what the opponent is doing. Either way, it's costing them games. And then there's the usage of personnel, which continues to make zero sense. James Cook is your most dynamic offensive player, not named Josh Allen. And he's playing less than expected in games where you desperately need playmakers. Ty Johnson got almost as many snaps. And the reason? Pass protection. That's it. Because he blocks better. Now look, I get it. You need to protect your quarterback. But you also need to move the football. And when Cook is sitting on the bench while the offense is sputtering, it's a problem. Use him in the slot. Use him in motion. Put him on screens. There are ways to protect and still keep your best players on the field. It doesn't have to be either-or. Ray Davis is another mystery. 2 snaps, 2 big plays. A first down catch and a touchdown. Then he vanishes. It makes no sense. If a guy is producing, you find ways to keep him involved, especially when your offense is struggling. But instead, the Bills fall back into their usual tendencies. Familiar personnel, familiar looks, familiar results. It's like they're more afraid of deviating from the plan than they are of losing the game. Before we dive back in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest Buffalo Bills updates straight to your screen. And hey, don't hold back. Let us know your thoughts on today's news down in the comments. There's a growing murmur swirling through Orchard Park, and it's not about the weather. Sources close to the Buffalo Bills sideline suggest that tension is brewing between quarterback Josh Allen and head coach Sean McDermott after a heated moment during last Sunday's game. According to whispers from those familiar with the situation, Allen wanted to go for it on a crucial 4th down late in the 3rd quarter, a moment that could have swung momentum back in Buffalo's favor. But McDermott, ever the defensive-minded tactician, overruled the call, opting instead for the punt. What followed, insiders say, wasn't just silence in the huddle, but static in the headset, and not the kind caused by faulty equipment. Allen, described by teammates as amped and frustrated, reportedly made his case to the coaching staff, insisting that the offense had the rhythm and confidence to push through. McDermott, however, stuck to his principles, prioritizing field position and trusting his defense. The decision didn't pay off, and the Bills eventually fell short. Now, the rumor mill is churning. Some around the team hint that this wasn't the first time Allen has butted heads with McDermott over in-game aggressiveness. The quarterback, known for his fiery competitiveness and do-or-die style, has often been vocal about wanting the ball in his hands when the game hangs in the balance. Meanwhile, McDermott's cautious, clock-controlling approach has drawn criticism from fans who see it as shackling the team's offensive potential. Neither side has addressed the reports publicly, but the body language on the sidelines told its own story. Allen pacing, McDermott stoic, and offensive coordinator Joe Brady caught somewhere in the middle. For a team chasing consistency in a tough AFC East, the emotional friction could be both the spark they need or the crack that widens under pressure. Whether this was just a moment of competitive fire or a sign of deeper philosophical divide remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, in Buffalo, even when the headset goes quiet, the noise never really stops. That's a wrap for now. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay on top of all things Buffalo Bills, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what you think in the comments. See you in the next update.